The Crusades were a series of brutal religious wars between Christians and Muslims, spanning centuries and leaving a trail of bloodshed and destruction. These wars were driven by religious zeal, territorial ambition, and the lure of glory. Here are 8 of the bloodiest and most shocking battles from these turbulent times. 1. The Siege of Antioch, 1097–1098. The First Crusade began with high hopes, but quickly turned into a test of endurance. The Siege of Antioch, a critical city in modern-day Turkey, lasted an agonizing 8 months. The Crusaders, numbering around 30,000 at the start, faced constant hunger, disease, and demoralization as supplies dwindled. Driven to the brink, some even resorted to cannibalism. When they finally breached Antioch's formidable walls, they unleashed their pent-up fury on the Muslim inhabitants, killing thousands in a brutal massacre. However, the Crusaders' ordeal was far from over. A massive Muslim relief army arrived, trapping the Crusaders inside the city they had just taken. Cornered, starving, and desperate, the Crusaders found strength in their faith. Led by claims of discovering a holy relic, the Spear of Longinus, they launched a daring counterattack. Against all odds, they routed the Muslim forces in what they considered a divine miracle, though it came at the cost of tens of thousands of lives on both sides. 2. The Fall of Jerusalem, 1099. The culmination of the First Crusade was the capture of Jerusalem, a prize that came at an unspeakable cost. 4 weeks, Crusader forces laid siege to the city, constructing siege towers and battering rams while enduring scorching summer heat and a lack of water. Once they breached the walls, the Crusaders unleashed unparalleled violence. Historians describe the massacre as total. Muslims, Jews, and even Eastern Christians caught in the crossfire were slaughtered indiscriminately. Many sought refuge in mosques and synagogues, only to be burned alive or cut down. Blood reportedly flowed through the streets, knee-high to the Crusaders' horses. The slaughter was so horrifying that even contemporary accounts, from both Christian and Muslim chroniclers, expressed shock. Jerusalem, the sacred goal of the crusade, had been drenched in blood to fulfill the Crusaders' divine mission. 3. The Battle of Hattin, 1187. By the late 12th century, the Crusader states faced growing pressure from Saladin, the brilliant Muslim general and Sultan of Egypt and Syria. At Hattin, near the Sea of Galilee, Saladin achieved a decisive victory that would change the course of the Crusades. The Crusader forces, led by King Guy of Jerusalem, were lured into the arid hills by Saladin's strategy of cutting off their water supply. Dehydrated and exhausted, the Crusaders were surrounded and overwhelmed by Saladin's forces. The Muslim army set fire to the dry grass, engulfing the Crusaders in smoke and chaos. When the fighting ended, most of the Crusader army lay dead, while the captured leaders were executed or sold into slavery. Saladin's triumph at Hattin paved the way for the recapture of Jerusalem and left the Crusader states reeling. 4. The Siege of Acre, 1189–1191. The Siege of Acre was one of the most significant battles of the Third Crusade, and a display of unrelenting violence. Crusader forces, bolstered by the arrival of Richard the Lionheart of England and Philip II of France, clashed with Saladin's army over the fortified city of Acre. The siege dragged on for 2 years, during which disease, famine, and combat claimed tens of thousands of lives. Despite the hardships, the Crusaders eventually breached the city's defenses, forcing Saladin's troops to withdraw. After the capture, Richard ordered the execution of around 3,000 Muslim prisoners, men, women, and children, when negotiations over their ransom broke down. This act of brutality shocked even some of his allies, but underscored the ruthlessness of the Crusades. 5. The Sack of Constantinople, 1204. What was meant to be a campaign to reclaim Jerusalem became a shocking betrayal during the Fourth Crusade. Lacking funds to continue their expedition, Crusader leaders struck a deal with Venetian merchants to sack Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, in exchange for financial support. The Crusaders laid siege to the Christian city and, after breaching its defenses, unleashed unimaginable destruction. Churches were looted, relics stolen, and citizens slaughtered. Women, including nuns, were raped, and the city's grand monuments defaced or destroyed. The sack permanently weakened the Byzantine Empire and deepened the schism between the Catholic and Orthodox churches, a rift that remains to this day. 6. The Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, 1212. While not part of the traditional Crusades in the Holy Land, the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa was a defining moment in the Spanish Reconquista, fought under the banner of a crusade. A coalition of Christian kingdoms, including Castile, Aragon, and Navarre, faced the Almohad Caliphate in a climactic battle. The Muslim forces, estimated at over 100,000, initially held the advantage with their superior numbers and fortifications. However, the Christian forces launched a bold and devastating assault, breaking through the enemy's defenses and decimating their army. The battle left the battlefield littered with tens of thousands of dead and marked the beginning of the end for Muslim rule in Spain. 7. The Siege of Damietta, 1218–1219. The Fifth Crusade targeted Egypt, viewing it as the key to conquering Jerusalem. The Siege of Damietta was marked by extreme suffering and relentless violence. The Crusaders, aided by advanced siege machinery, launched continuous assaults on the heavily fortified city. Disease, flooding from the Nile, and counterattacks from Egyptian forces turned the siege into a protracted and bloody stalemate. When the city finally fell, the Crusaders celebrated, but their campaign ended in disaster. Poor planning and overreach led to their eventual defeat, with thousands more dying as the Crusader army retreated in shame. 8. The Battle of Mantua, 1250. During the Seventh Crusade, led by King Louis IX of France, the Crusaders sought to capture Egypt once again. The battle at Mantua was a chaotic and devastating clash. The Crusaders launched a surprise attack on the city, but were met with fierce resistance from the Egyptian defenders. The Nile Delta's narrow waterways disoriented the Crusader army, leaving them vulnerable to counterattacks. Surrounded and unable to retreat, the Crusader forces were decimated. King Louis IX himself was captured and held for ransom, a humiliating blow to the Crusader cause. This defeat marked the decline of large-scale crusades in the Muslim world. The Crusades, driven by religious fervor and political ambition, left an indelible mark on history. These battles, among the bloodiest of the era, reveal the devastating human cost of these conflicts and the enduring scars they left on the lands and peoples they touched.